All right, well, we're about 2 minutes past the hour, so I think we're going to get started here. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Becky Sherman. I'm a program officer at NSF in the Regional Innovation Engines program, and we are very excited to have you all joining us today so we can talk more about the Engines program. So I'm going to jump right in. As a roadmap to today's session, we're going to start off with a brief overview of the Engines program. This is going to be pretty high level. I'd still recommend that you check out our webinar and read the BAA. Then we're going to have a ecosystem builder panel, a brief sort of lightning fast panel to talk with some experts who have been on the ground building innovation ecosystems. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time in breakout rooms organized by region, so you have an opportunity to actually start conversations with other folks in your region. So let's get started. If you're not familiar with NSF, NSF predominantly supports basic and foundational research. This is something that we've been doing for a long time. It's something that we're going to continue to do. We're an $8.5 billion agency, and 94% of those dollars go out the door to fund research and other education-related activities. And in any given year, we'll invest around $200 million in public-private partnerships. In the last 6 weeks, maybe 2 months now, NSF has stood up a new directorate, the Directorate for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships, or the TIP Directorate. This directorate isn't set up around a discipline like the other directorates, but it really spans across all 7 of our other directorates and our 2 offices. The mission of TIP is to really advance emerging technologies, address pressing societal challenges, and accelerate the translation of research results from lab to market. TIP really aims to improve U.S. competitiveness, to grow the U.S. economy, and to train a diverse workforce. But what we're really here to talk about today are the engines, right? Not just the TIP Directorate. So what is the Engines program? The goal of the program is to really catalyze and accelerate regional scale R&D based innovation ecosystems across the US. And we see these engines as being able to advance critical technologies within a region while addressing societal challenges and really enabling job creation and promoting economic growth. So what is an engine? An engine is, when we talk about an NSF engine, we're really talking about a multi-sector coalition of partners working together in a region to catalyze that innovation ecosystem. And it's really built up around a topic area that is of regional relevance, but also national significance. Engines are led by a CEO, and they include partners from across industry, institutions of higher ed, government, nonprofits, and community-led organizations. If you imagine an engine that's seated sort of in the center of a regional innovation ecosystem, you can imagine as an engine grows over the course of 10 years, if they're doing their jobs well, we're doing our jobs well, we would expect to see this regional innovation ecosystem expand and grow and strengthen over time. So the NSF Engines program has 2 different types of awards. Our Type 1 awards are really for regions that are still in sort of a developmental stage of their innovation ecosystem. So it's a shorter, smaller investment. And then the Type 2s are larger awards, so up to $160 million over and up to 10 years. And these awards are really for innovation ecosystems that are already sitting at the nascent or emergent phase. And the expectation is that funding from NSF will help guide the innovation ecosystem through the nascent, through the growth phases of its ecosystem maturity. So what might an engine look like? These are some examples. We want to see engines that are addressing a societal or national need. So you can imagine a lot of topics underneath climate change. Perhaps you're thinking about equitable access to healthcare or resilient infrastructure. regardless of the societal challenge that you're building your engine around, you can imagine several potential technology sectors being used to address that challenge, whether it's artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, right? Any combination of those could be used to address needs related to climate change or healthcare, for example. And we really are looking for sort of cross-disciplinary approaches to solving these societal challenges. There's a couple characteristics of an engine that I want to highlight here. So as we are driving regional economic growth through R&D innovation, we really want an engine to be focused in three areas: the use-inspired R&D, the translation of innovation to practice, and growing a comprehensive workforce. We also are looking to build these innovation ecosystems that can thrive for decades to come. So in order to do that, we're interested in financial sustainability, seeing an engine establish a culture of innovation, also a culture of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. We want to see that diversity and inclusion piece really embedded throughout all aspects of the engine, because we do want to make sure that these engines are driving community wealth across the region. And we have a whole set of things around engine structure and accountability that I will say, just sort of point you to the BAA for more details about those. In terms of eligibility for who can submit proposals, when thinking about who can submit as a lead or receive subawards, there's a range of entities that can do this. So institutions of higher ed, US-based nonprofits, or for-profit organizations would be eligible to do that. In addition, those eligible to receive subawards would be US federally funded research and development centers, US national labs, as well as US state, local, and tribal governments that within those would be limited to agencies or offices around economic and workforce development. There is a set of organizations or entities that would be ineligible to lead or receive a subaward. I would point you to the BA for more details about that. So let's talk a little bit about engine structure. There's a lot of flexibility that an engine has in determining how it wants to set up its structure. We're going to sort of highlight a few examples, but these are not an exhaustive list, nor are they necessarily preferred examples. Just to kind of get you thinking about all the different ways something could be stood up. So you can imagine an engine lead being a consortium of colleges with a variety of core partners around it that may range from philanthropic organizations, nonprofits focused in workforce, VCs, community college, and then the local government and state government and the university sitting as other partners in the engine. And you can imagine you can sort of reorganize these partners in a lot of different ways to design an engine. So you may have a lead that's really a new cross-sector entity that's been stood up to lead an engine. Maybe it's a university, maybe it's a corporation, right? So any of these constructs are possible, and there are many other ways to do it. The last thing I just want to highlight here is where we see the NSF Engines program fitting into the larger innovation ecosystem space. And we like to use this analogy of a plant. So if you imagine this plant, NSF and all of its investments in basic research and foundational research is really sitting at the root of that plant, right? And then as you move up the plant, maybe above ground, that's where you're going to see your R&D focused economic development, and then higher up that plant is where you see direct investment from startups, VCs, accelerators, etc. We really see the Engines program as sort of being that chute and stem system support structure of the plant that really connects everything from the deepest roots all the way up to the tips of all the leaves, right? Really bridging all these different groups. And we recognize that other folks are working in this space and doing it really well, right? So you can imagine SBA, Department of Commerce, Department of Energy, right? They're all doing a lot of work in the economic development space. And you can envision, I'm sure, foundries and incubators, private investors who are all working in the direct investment space. And we really want the engines to build upon this and connect into all of these different entities working to drive innovation across the nation. So what's next? Team formation, right? And that starts today. So we've got a series of roadshows happening now, running through June 15th. The biggest deadline that I want to highlight everyone's attention or bring everyone's attention to is the concept outlines, which are due on June 30th. So we encourage you to get a concept outline submitted by then. This is your ticket for Proposers Day. That's going to be on August 1st. Oh, I don't want to forget to mention that if you haven't heard already, concept outlines, one of the things that we will be doing with that is we will be publishing all of the approved concept outlines. So everyone will know who's in their region interested in this program. So that's going to hopefully encourage you all to reach out to each other and start making connections across your region. And then from this point forward, hopefully you in your regions can start organizing your own events to try to build partnerships and drive connections across your networks. And there will be opportunities if you're doing that to reach out to us if you want someone from NSF to come to talk to you about that stuff. And there'll be ways for you to do that we can talk about in the near future. So I want to just highlight some of the upcoming events. We've got a Q&A session coming up on June 21st, and you can see all the roadshows posted here. If you're attending today and you're not from one of the states that are listed here, you're certainly welcome to stay, but also consider maybe coming back when your region is going to be highlighted. And then lastly, I just, before we move on, I want to just wrap up by emphasizing that, the goal of the NSF Engines program is to really expand the geography of innovation across the nation. So as you're all out there beginning to make plans for your type 1 or your type 2 proposals, I really want to challenge you to start by focusing on the strengths and assets of your region rather than focusing on the resources that your individual organization can offer the region. Think about what your vision is for the region and how you can use $160 million to cultivate innovation, an innovation and technology ecosystem. And whatever it is you're visioning, it's certainly going to take more than a single university, a single company, or a single government office to achieve that. So I just want to kind of leave you with that thought. And I'm going to wrap up now and hand it over to my colleague, Daniel Gutzel, so that we can get into this ecosystem builder panel.
Great, thank you so much. All right, let's pull the panel together on screen now. So I'm Daniel Gutzel, I'm on the National Science Foundation Engines team, and I'm excited to lead a panel of fantastic ecosystem builders who are doing work in Ohio, Tennessee, Michigan, but actually doing work all across the country. So it looks like we have everybody on screen now. So what I'm going to ask is for each of you to give kind of a 2-minute overview of your ecosystem and your role in it. So I'll start with James, and then we'll go to Kristina and Ray to wrap it up. So James, do you want to introduce yourself and give us a 2-minute overview of your role in your ecosystem?
Good afternoon. I'll imagine I'm standing in front of a room of about 300 people here and can just kind of look out at everybody. James Feagin, based out of Detroit. I am the chief strategist for a firm called Projects+PEOPLE. Been working in Detroit professionally for about the last 20 years or so. Our firm has worked in projects really starting with just economic development and entrepreneurship. In Detroit, a lot of work around small business challenges, building them, helping mission-led organizations, whether it was the city governments, philanthropy, local entities, create more inclusive pathways to entrepreneurship. there's building programs, and then eventually expanding into a lot of neighborhood planning and kind of building infrastructure and retail nodes. And from there, really kind of moved up the chain to starting to think about mobility, not just in terms of benefiting the end user and creating accessibility in the neighborhoods, but actually increasing participation among the innovators themselves. And that's where we've really found a sweet spot in terms of working to build programs for, whether it's, again, philanthropy, city government, or innovators, like one of our clients is New Lab, for example, and just helping to create those bridges from what we call the innovation economy to folks who are often either afterthoughts or not participators. And that's expanded into building funds, launching funds, deploying funds, preparing folks, building accelerators. And we've done a bit of work around the country. I've actually done some work in Cleveland with Ray, done some work in New Orleans, advised groups like Policy Link and National League of Cities, and just continue that work today in Detroit and around the country.
Great, thanks, James.
Thank you.
Kristina, do you want to go next?
There we go. Sorry, I've been having technical difficulties. This is on my phone, so hope this goes okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
You're good? Okay, great. Good. Well, I am in Chattanooga, Tennessee, probably an unlikely area you might think had a lot of innovation happening. I am the managing partner of the JumpFund. We are an all-women-led micro VC / angel investor fund that started here in Chattanooga, really out of kind of a growing movement in our startup ecosystem, where we weren't seeing a lot of women at first on any of the demo stages, but really that kicked off in about 2009 here, when our EPB, our electric power board, put in a gigabit infrastructure here. We were the fastest internet in the country pretty early on. So we had an advantage over a lot of other cities, and we're able to bring companies here to innovate, to do things like 3D manufacturing, and really kind of use the gig as a tool. So we were sort of seeing a lot of interesting companies, but our fund developed because those companies were all male-led. And so we were questioning that and wondering why that was an issue. So fast forward to a few years later, in about 2013, we launched our first fund, and have a second fund as well that we invest only in women-led ventures across the Southeast. So in Chattanooga, really the innovative economy has grown, and I am really pleased to say it's much more diverse than when it started out back in about 2010, when we started kind of our first gig tank programs. So we have multiple accelerators here. Some are VC backed that have been built by successful companies here in Chattanooga. We launched an innovation district here that serves as a hub and then kind of a spoke model that the Brookings Institute has highlighted as one of the best in the country for a mid-sized city. So you can look us up and see what we've done. A lot of that is based on our collaborative effort and our public-private partnerships between universities, private foundations, city government. We have a group called the Enterprise Center that is run by the city, funded by the city, that kind of looks at kind of bigger picture things like digital infrastructure and digital equity right now. And then places like the Company Lab, Launch Chattanooga, and some others that are really focused on kind of growing those startups from kind of early stage to really kind of that higher level tech talent. And now I'm pleased to say we have several new incubators popping up that are run by ventures that were homegrown here in Chattanooga and have been really successful, like Bellhops. One of the areas that is a big focus in Chattanooga is logistics. So a lot of technology has occurred around that. Several venture capital firms, small firms here are just focused on those efforts. So that's kind of just in a nutshell here what we're doing in Chattanooga, but I do think we're a great example of how a mid-sized city and a sort of unknown spot where we're nicely positioned between Nashville and Atlanta can kind of really grow your own and attract also some high-level tech talent. We saw a huge influx of folks the past couple of years during the pandemic, just people wanting to find a different way of life. It's a wonderful, beautiful area here in Chattanooga, a lot of outdoor opportunities and a really great place to live. So with our gigabit infrastructure, really you can work from anywhere, and some really interesting companies are being built here now. So I'll stop. I want to also just say that I'm also on the board of Launch Tennessee, which is our statewide umbrella organization. So really part of the work has been seeded by the fact that we have this umbrella organization that serves 7 accelerators across the state, as well as works with over 10 tech transfer institutions, research institutions across the state as well. So there's a lot of activity happening in Tennessee, and Chattanooga is just kind of one of the hubs of that activity. I'll stop to tell the panel. Thanks.
Yeah, fantastic. Ray, do you want to wrap up this first portion for us?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Ray Leach from JumpStart. We're based in Cleveland, Ohio. We were formed almost 20 years ago as a venture development organization, really as a catalyst, as a singular organization to coach hundreds of tech and innovation-driven companies and invest in, let's say, 10 to 15 a year. That occurred for 5 years, and starting in 2008, 2009, JumpStart was asked to actually build out the entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem in Northeast Ohio. That's a region of about 4.5 million people that now has expanded across Northern Ohio. But what might be super interesting to this group is JumpStart was also very involved starting about 10 years ago, working with institutional, public-private philanthropic leaders, helping them think about innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystems in their regions. So I've worked in 25 regions across the country, helping leaders of various seats at the table to think about their entrepreneurial economy and how to drive things. The analogy or the illustration earlier of the plant, I would view a lot of JumpStart's activity is at the top of that plant. So accelerators, early stage venture capital, working with a lot of entrepreneurs that are from industry. We're really excited about the impact that the NSF Engines program can catalyze to really connect to R&D and certainly to have a stronger connection to universities. One other element that I think is really important to this work is the role of intermediaries. So to give you a sense, over the last decade or so, JumpStart has raised or been awarded about $400 million of public, private, and philanthropic resources, primarily grants, that fund 20 partners across Ohio. So this idea of building a backbone capacity, capability, and of course it can happen in lots of different organizations, and an NSF engine is something we have a lot of experience with.
Great, thank you so much. So now I'm gonna ask a question to the full panel, and I'm gonna ask each of you to tackle it in a slightly different way. And I know that you all span multiple sectors and do work in a lot of different ways, but I'm gonna ask you, what does it mean to build a sustainable capital stack? How do you do that? How do you do that well? Because we talk a lot about sustainability. I mean, we're going to be in these regions for up to 10 years, potentially longer than that. But we really understand that it's going to take more than our capital. It's going to take a lot of folks coming to the table together to build. So, James, I was hoping you could talk about it from a philanthropic perspective, given Detroit's robust philanthropic community. Kristina, I was hoping you could take this question from more of an investment and corporate perspective. You know, what does follow-on funding structures look like? And Ray, since JumpStart was seated and has worked very closely with government, if you could talk about the role of government, that would be fantastic. So we'll go in the same order. We'll start with James. If you could talk about sustainable capital stacks and the role of philanthropy, that would be fantastic.
So best way I can describe it is I'll actually mimic the way I approach a lot of philanthropy or philanthropy advising. And I'll mimic the investor model. You know, if you are a seed investor in a company, there's an understanding that at some point that company is going to have to generate revenue, and you're not going to be the sole funder and source of income for that startup for an indefinite period of time. But you do also recognize that there is a need to give that idea the space to grow and incubate and gain traction. And so, you know, you create milestones. You have an idea that you find captivating, that you find catalytic, that is in the right time and right space. And some of those may be long form investments, some of those may be disruptions that are existing today, but you're essentially saying, okay, you know, this amount of capital is going to help you grow this team to this point, get it from here to here, and then here we'll reevaluate. And then from there, we may make a second investment, but we would look to see others come to the table. And at some point, you expect that thing to have enough traction and value that it can sustain in the long form by having other folks come along it. Or it may be something that sometimes we end up becoming the customer, which I know sounds contradictory, but there are some tools that just become essential that have core value to what we do, meaning we, whoever the stakeholder is, and then something sunset and you pivot on the other ideas, so they're not meant to last forever. Kristina, I know you know my good friend Josh McManus, if you've worked down there in Cleveland, and he was someone I really learned about. A 3-year life cycle is a great thing to just embrace, and start from day one and say, this is not something we're standing up to last forever. Don't buy your home based on this income. Don't keep your LinkedIn written in pencil. We're going to learn some things, we're going to innovate, and then we're going to apply these learnings and move on. And so it becomes about advancing ideas more than constantly standing up new organizations. And I think that's the step that we've tried to take. I mean, I am right now in the midst of tearing down something that I've helped build twice over. One of my clients was the Rock family of companies, Dan Gilbert's kind of brainchild of stuff. And a couple of years ago, they had this thing called Wisdom, where they were investing in startups. I came on board as a consultant, helped them, tear that down, and eventually launched what became Detroit Demo Day, where we provided $1 million a year in capital to startups ended up going 5 years. Pandemic at a little, time shifted everybody's timeline. And now I'm in the process of kind of tearing that down and rebuilding it. People love Demo Day. It was, $1 million in grants, 0% interest loans and some safe notes. And we had a big party, TI would come. I think Wyclef came one year. It would be very easy to just hit rinse and repeat. But we have an ism that we call obsessed with finding a better way. And so I'm now back advising the family of companies, specifically the Gilbert Family Foundation, on how we apply the learnings of our entrepreneurial investments over the last 10 years and respond to the needs of now. And I think that that's the main thing I'd say there is we built Demo Day based on the reality of Detroit in 2016. We were not a part of the national tech and startup conversation. There wasn't a lot of visibility. We were losing talent. We still are probably net, but we got some success stories that we've been able to generate that we're really proud of. And some of our entrepreneurs that have gone from what's venture funding to $15 million cap tables. And we're proud of that. And so now we take that learning, we've dispersed some of it, open sourced everything. And now we're building what's next based on the needs of today and how we're looking out the next 5 or 10 years and how we can be equally catalytic with that same set of principles in mind.
Great. Thanks so much, James. Can't promise I'll have Wyclef or TI at our future NSF roadshows, but good to know. Kristina, you're up next to speak from an investment perspective.
Sure, and James, I love that you mentioned Josh McManus, because really kind of the seed of our innovation economy here was started with the group that he created called Create Here. So it was really more about ideas and ideation rather than how to create the next Google, right? So it is about turning those ideas here. So as far as funding goes, I kind of play the drum on two sides. One is because I'm involved with Launch Tennessee and have seen a lot of really great statewide models that if you can harness state or federal dollars to provide matching grants at the state level, once they get some of these early stage kind of R&D grants, so like the SBIR grants or other grants that are coming through, maybe through NSF or other partners, that really gives just kind of additional validation and undergirds them so that then they can really ready themselves for that kind of next stage capital, more institutional or venture capital. The angels are really important in that as well. And so on kind of on both sides, Launch Tennessee has a matching grant program for all our SBIR grants now, where if you get an SBIR grant, you get to apply for those, and your first cut, phase one, you get a $100,000 check, and your second cut, if you make it, you get a $300,000 check. And so that really, really helps some of these companies. One of ours in Chattanooga, a 3D printed architecture company, Branch Technology, just won their phase two grant matching dollars. So that is really key, I think, is to have those kind of early stage matching dollars, because so many of these tech companies, it's just hard to get to that kind of next stage proof points, particularly in life sciences or some of those other hard sciences. So you need those dollars because it's hard to get those early stage investors, particularly in our region. I think we're not on one of the coasts, and we don't have huge venture capital players here. What we do have is a pretty good network of Southeast investors, and we are building our connections with outside investors as well. We host a large event every year called 3686 in Nashville. Those are the longitude and latitude points of Nashville, where investors and entrepreneurs and people from all over the country come to see what's happening in the state of Tennessee and really kind of around the Southeast. As far as angel investing goes, I'm also on the board of the Angel Capital Association, and we're a national network professional organization of accredited angel investors. And we really cut those first checks, right? We're the ones in your communities, in your local regions, who are going to take the highest risk and be most interested in what's happening kind of around economic development and in our backyards. And we really like to get in close to those entrepreneurs and really help them. So a lot of times you can find very expert-oriented angel investors who know the spaces really well and can be really helpful and mentor those early stage entrepreneurs. So at the Angel Capital Association, one thing we've really been trying to do is to educate more angels and get more angels to the table. There are a lot of emerging fund managers, particularly women and investors of color, that we're trying to cultivate to gain more diversity in the field and among the investor pool. But in addition to that, we are going to towns like Detroit. Actually, we're partnering with Tech Town now in Detroit, and as well as in Erie, Lake Erie region, with the Fire Accelerator, to provide our Angel University and training programs, as well as some mentoring and coaching around fund development and fund acceleration. So that's another piece of the pie that you really need to cultivate in your communities. Where are the angels? How do you help educate more angels? How do you help bring in more angels? Because those are your first checks. Those are those kind of next stage capital people. You know, the state is sort of helps to de-risk. You've got the grants, the non-dilutive funding, you've got the state, and then you've got angel investors who really come in at those earlier stages. And then beyond that, if you can get companies to those stages and get that early investment, then it looks a lot better to outside investors, as you know, as far as institutionals and larger venture capital firms.
Great, thanks so much. Ray, can you give us the government perspective briefly?
Yeah, we're very lucky in the state of Ohio. This state has had a program called the Ohio Third Frontier that is a publicly financed bond issue that has provided hundreds of millions of dollars across dozens of funds in the state of Ohio that are focused on pre-seed, seed, and what the state called seed plus dollars, or really those are early Series A dollars. Those programs require cash match. So at the pre-seed and seed level, they're dollar for dollar cash match, and at the seed plus level, they're 3-to-1 match. So $1 of state money for every $3 of private money. These programs have been incredibly meaningful for JumpStart. To give you a sense, JumpStart will have invested, or we have invested about $70 million at the pre-seed and seed stage over the last 15 years or so. And that $70 million has come to a lot of it has been matched, of course, and we've been able to do a lot of it as a catalyst of the state dollars. That $70 million over a 20-year period should generate about a $225 million return for JumpStart, and we're a 501c3. So all of those returns are catalyzing the increasing strength of our local, regional, and statewide ecosystem. At the same time, our $70 million that we've invested has leveraged over $2 billion of private capital. Again, we're focused at we and funds like us across the state are focused at the very, very early stages. So as one thinks about an NSF engine, and or building out this ecosystem, whether, in a perfect world, you have a really robust partnership with your state. Most states don't have that opportunity. So a lot of the experience that Kristina and I'm sure other folks on the call can share around how do you catalyze your local, regional, statewide, and maybe multi-state investment ecosystem to be able to have enough dollars. And the last thing I'd say on this is all these investments take a lot of time for a return. So, the average time to exit for a Series A investment, which is a company that's further mature, is a little less than 7 years last year. If you're investing at earlier stages, the average time to exit, it's going to take a decade or more, or at least 8 to 9 years until you start getting investment capital returned to your ecosystem. So I wish it was a quicker ROI, but this is the runway to do this successfully is longer than any of us would like.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is all incredibly valuable advice. So we're about to wrap it up so that people can actually have these conversations in their breakout room. And each of our panelists are going to be joining the breakout room, so you can ask them questions there, continue the discussion. But I'm asked a rapid fire question, no longer than 30 seconds each, as people are about to go into these rooms and meet with people who they might not otherwise have known, who might not otherwise be around the table for economic development conversations. So each of you, 30 seconds. Who is someone who wasn't at the table in the early days of your ecosystem development? And why did you are they at the table now? So name the organization and then a sentence or two tops. So let's go Ray. We'll go reverse direction. Ray, who wasn't at the table in the early days and who's at the table now?
Yeah, clearly who wasn't at the table 20 years ago were the community groups, the groups from the neighborhoods of Cleveland and particularly the disconnected neighborhoods of Northern Ohio. Those stakeholders and actors are at the table, making decisions, shaping decisions, and forming strategies. They were absolutely not there 20 years ago.
Great. Kristina.
Well, it's interesting. You think it would be not the university, but the university was kind of in name only apart for a while. And really, I would say in the past 8 or so years has completely flipped, partly because of some leadership changes at the university level. And our business school has started its own incubator program. And so there's just a lot more connection into what's happening and a lot of more tech transfer happening at our local university. So it was interesting that wasn't really happening at the beginning, even though they were at the table.
Great. James, close us out.
Rather than repeat what Ray said, because I'll echo that, I'm going to offer an additional perspective. High-performing entrepreneurs. Often when you launch these ecosystem efforts, you're getting the folks that are trying to figure out they need help, but there's a whole sector of folks out there that are just doing it on either doing it on their own or they're already connected. And those are the folks that you need to have at the table as mentors, as advisors, some of them even as funders. They've done well. They're looking for ways to contribute. They have checks to write. They have relationships to build. If you're not bringing your high performers into your ecosystem, you're losing your strongest asset because they are what you're trying to create at scale.
Great point on founder-led ecosystems. And thank you all for this really illuminating conversation. So I'm going to turn it back over to Becky now, and she can give instructions to everyone so that people can start the discussion in their breakout rooms. And we hope these are a great opportunity to start ideating and think about topics. So thank you, James, Ray, and Kristina. And back over to you now, Becky.
Great. So I hope everyone can see my screen. So that was a fantastic panel, and I encourage everyone when we do move into our breakout rooms that pay attention to who's joining, because our panelists will be jumping in and out of the breakout rooms, and you want to sort of take advantage of their participation so that you can ask them questions and get their perspective on things. A few things that I want to just touch on before, sorry about that, before we move into the breakout rooms. So the goals for the breakout rooms, really these are designed, and please don't jump into the rooms yet, just hold on for a moment. The breakout rooms are really designed as a jumping off point for future teaming. We really encourage open discussions about your region's strengths and areas of growth, and we want inclusive conversations. We want there to be room for everyone to participate, and we want you to be thinking about all the different organizations and partners that can add value to a proposal. A few things that this is not: a pitch session to NSF on your ideas. This is not a competitive environment. We want you all sharing ideas and talking. And hopefully this is not the last time that you're having conversations with the folks in these rooms. Hopefully this is just the beginning of a conversation that is going to continue from now long into the lifetime of the engine. And I just want to emphasize here that, there is no real advantage to not sharing your ideas. As we mentioned, we're going to be sharing the concept outlines. And from what we've seen, the folks who go into these rooms really kind of just trying to engage in a genuine conversation about the region and the region's assets really seem to come out of this with a direction forward. And these are big, complex challenges that we've thrown at you with this Engines program. And so everyone's got questions. Everyone's not sure what direction they really should be going in. So sharing early is really, we think, the best way forward. So the breakout rooms, we've organized these by state. This is by no means is meant to define a region for you. We expect regions to cross state boundaries, but just as a way to get folks initially organized with people who are geographically nearby, we're going to organize by state. You're more than welcome to move between room to room over the course of the discussion. And one thing you may notice is that we today have 2 rooms for Massachusetts and we have 2 rooms for New York. That's simply because we had a lot of people sign up from those 2 states. And we find that when the rooms get too large, it's really hard to get a conversation going. So feel free to try to spread yourselves out across those 2 rooms so that the discussion can be manageable in each room. And the last thing I just want to note, just a mention about this region of service. We really talk about this a lot in the program. It's up to you to define your region of service. This could be a single state, it could be a single metropolitan area, it could be a metropolitan area and including its the surrounding rural areas. A region could cross state lines, it could be multi-state. It's really up to you to figure out what the best region is for your needs. We really want proposals to be driven by the local regional economy. And you want to be thinking about growing regional talent. And the other thing to remember is that, we do expect the lead to be within the region of service, but that certainly doesn't mean you can't reach outside of the region of service to bring in partners and stakeholders needed to benefit that region, right? And once again, I just want to encourage everyone to continue to think about working collaboratively and engaging all the people in your breakout rooms and in your regions. And with that, you're going to have some framing questions to kind of drive the discussion. I'm not going to go over them, but the facilitators in your room will share these questions with you. And I just want to highlight one more time, type 1 deadlines. And type 2 deadlines are coming up soon. So the concept outline is due on June 30th. For type 1s, letter of intent is due August 31st and full proposals September 29th. So you want to keep those dates in front of mind. Type 2 deadlines for the LOIs and the full proposals will be announced at a later date. So I'm going to stop talking at this point and I'm going to ask everyone to move into their regions of service, wow, their breakout rooms in the states that they're interested in going to.